Ladies and gentlemen, today I will take you on a journey into one of the most notorious and secure prisons in the world, ADX Florence in Fremont County, Colorado. Known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, this facility was opened in 1994 to house the most dangerous and high-risk inmates in the U.S. federal prison system. In the high desert of Fremont County, Colorado, rises a structure unlike any other in the United States. The United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility, more commonly known as ADX Florence. From the outside, it might appear as just another federal prison, but its sheer scale, security measures, and architectural design tell a story of extreme control and precision. Spanning 37 acres of barren desert land, the facility is meticulously planned, each feature engineered not just to house inmates, but to contain the most dangerous individuals in the country. ADX Florence was constructed in 1994 with a singular purpose: to solve the problem of what to do with inmates who were deemed too dangerous, too unpredictable, or too high risk for any other prison. These are individuals who, in other prisons, had committed violent acts against guards or fellow prisoners, orchestrated escapes, or exhibited behaviors that made them virtually uncontrollable. In short, the prison was built for the worst of the worst, people whose very presence posed a serious threat to everyone around them. But the designers of ADX Florence went beyond simple containment. They sought total control, an environment where every movement, sound, and interaction could be monitored, predicted, and managed. The facility is surrounded by razor wire fences, each layered several times over, forming a formidable barrier that stretches across the perimeter. Beyond the fences lies a no-man's land of gravel and sand, designed so that even a single footprint is immediately noticeable. Motion sensors, laser tripwires, and pressure pads buried beneath the ground create overlapping layers of surveillance, making any attempt to escape virtually impossible. Gun towers rise at regular intervals, their armed personnel trained to respond instantly to any threat, and infrared cameras sweep the area continuously, day and night, recording every movement no matter how small. Even inside the walls, the fortress is unyielding. ADX Florence is divided into several housing units, but its most infamous section is the control unit, known as the HB block, where isolation is taken to its most extreme form. Each cell is a concrete box, 8 feet by 10 feet, with walls, floors, and ceilings made entirely of reinforced concrete. The bed, desk, and stool are molded from the same material, leaving inmates no comfort other than the small essentials of life. The steel door is solid, heavy, and virtually impenetrable, with only a narrow slot for food to pass through. The small window, measuring 4 inches wide by 36 inches long, is angled upward, allowing inmates a glimpse of the sky, but carefully designed to prevent any view of the surrounding horizon or any other human being. The design emphasizes sensory restriction, keeping prisoners removed from the world outside and from one another, creating a controlled environment in which unpredictability is eliminated. Security is integrated into every part of the building. Ventilation ducts are sealed and inaccessible, preventing contraband from being passed or messages from being sent between cells. Even the plumbing is engineered for control. The toilets are designed to automatically shut off if an inmate attempts to flood or misuse them. Lights remain on 24 hours a day, with only a slight dimming at night, ensuring that the rhythm of artificial light dominates the inmate's sense of time. Every door in the prison is electronically controlled, remotely operated from the central control room. Guards never need to enter cells directly unless absolutely necessary, minimizing contact and further enforcing isolation. The architecture of ADX Florence is also designed with lines of sight and surveillance in mind. Corridors are angled so that a single guard or camera can monitor multiple areas at once. Observation towers and control centers are strategically placed to maximize coverage, and motion detectors inside the buildings complement the visual monitoring systems. The prison's entire design follows what experts call the control through architecture principle, a concept where the structure itself enforces order, discipline, and observation, leaving little to chance. Every movement is observed, recorded, and analyzed, allowing guards to anticipate potential incidents before they occur. This concrete fortress is not just a prison. It is a mechanical, psychological, and architectural marvel of containment. The precision of its design extends beyond security to influence daily life. Even the simplest tasks, such as moving from one area to another, require going through multiple electronically controlled doors, often while shackled, under strict supervision. Recreation occurs in small outdoor pens enclosed by concrete walls and steel mesh roofs, leaving inmates with no contact with one another and limited interaction with the natural world. The sense of being trapped inside a human-scale maze, reinforced with concrete and steel, is constant and inescapable. ADX Florence's reputation as an escape-proof prison is not merely a product of its walls or towers, but of the integration of technology, architecture, and surveillance into a system of total control. Redundant security systems ensure that no single failure can compromise the fortress. Power outages trigger backup generators, and every alarm, sensor, and camera has manual overrides and secondary control measures in place. Even beyond the physical security, the facility employs a digital system that tracks inmates' behavior, movement, and mental health records in real time. This combination of physical and informational control allows staff to anticipate problems, enforce discipline, and maintain absolute dominance over the environment and its inhabitants. Within this concrete fortress, every aspect of human existence is reduced to routine, observation, and survival. The walls, doors, and cells do more than contain, they define life itself. ADX Florence stands as a stark example of what modern architecture and technology can achieve when used to impose order over human beings, illustrating both the power and the moral complexity of extreme incarceration. Inside ADX Florence, isolation is not merely a condition, it is the very foundation of daily life. The prison was designed to house individuals deemed too dangerous or unpredictable for any other facility, and the method for managing such inmates is through complete social and sensory separation. Here, human contact is stripped down to the bare minimum, and the walls of concrete and steel are both literal and symbolic barriers between inmates and the outside world. Each inmate in the control unit, particularly in the notorious HB block, resides in a cell no larger than a small bedroom, measuring just 8 feet by 10 feet. The cell is made entirely of concrete, with the bed, desk, and stool all molded from the same material. These are not amenities, they are tools of containment. The steel door is solid, unyielding, and contains only a small slot for the delivery of food and the occasional brief communication. There is a tiny window, angled upward, 4 inches wide by 36 inches long, allowing only a limited glimpse of the sky. This design ensures that inmates can never see beyond their immediate environment, never observe the world outside, and crucially, never make eye contact with other prisoners. Inmates wake not to the sound of natural life, but to the mechanical hum of locks and the echo of guards' boots along the corridor. At precisely 6 a.m., breakfast is slid through the food port, a metal hatch in the door, and the exchange is fleeting, just long enough to receive the tray, then the hatch closes with a metallic thud. There is no conversation, no shared meal, no communal space. This is the standard for all meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, delivered through a slot in the door. Human contact is a controlled event, minimized to prevent any spontaneous interaction that might disrupt order. Recreation, too, is a solitary experience. Inmates are entitled to 1 hour of exercise per day, but this is far from a communal yard or playground. The outdoor pen, often called the dog run by inmates, is no larger than a small bathroom, enclosed by 20-foot concrete walls and a steel mesh roof, cutting off any contact with others. Prisoners are shackled at the wrists, waist, and ankles, and escorted through a series of electronically controlled doors to reach this pen. They may walk in circles, pace, or simply stare at the patch of blue sky visible above the walls. Even here, no other human presence is permitted, and the only sounds they hear are the desert wind, the echo of their own footsteps, or the faint mechanical noises of the facility. Isolation in ADX is not only physical but also psychological. The average inmate sees fewer than 4 human faces per day, and most of those encounters are brief, transactional, and separated by reinforced glass. The prison's design prevents even eye contact between inmates. Each cell faces inward toward concrete walls rather than toward neighboring cells. Guards supervise every interaction. The idea is to eliminate unpredictability entirely. In this environment, inmates often develop routines or rituals simply to maintain a sense of structure or sanity. Some pace the floor repeatedly, count tiles, or tap coded messages through the ventilation system in a desperate attempt to communicate. These are often discovered and punished, further reinforcing the isolation. The effects of such isolation are profound. Psychologists and human rights advocates have described it as a form of sensory deprivation that can fundamentally alter the mind. Inmates report hearing voices through the vents, experiencing hallucinations, and losing their sense of time and place. Some communicate with objects in the cell, ants, tiles, or the concrete walls themselves, assigning them personalities to stave off the crushing silence. This psychological strain is not incidental. It is the direct result of the design and operation of ADX Florence. The prison does not attempt to rehabilitate in the traditional sense. Its goal is control, and control is achieved through the meticulous management of sensory input, human contact, and environmental stimuli. Even the smallest gestures of human contact are strictly regulated. Letters are screened by staff, phone calls are limited to 15 minutes per month, and all communication is recorded and monitored. Medical visits occur behind reinforced glass, and education or religious programs are delivered in controlled, solitary environments. Every aspect of daily life is filtered through a lens of security and observation, leaving the inmate with little autonomy or privacy. Isolation also affects the inmate's perception of time and reality. The lights in their cells remain on 24 hours a day, dimmed only slightly at night. With no natural cues like sunrise or sunset, days blend into nights, and weeks or months may pass with almost no sense of progression. The repetitive rhythm of meals, exercise, and surveillance becomes the primary marker of time, creating a life measured in the cycles of the prison rather than any external reality. This extreme isolation has a stark purpose: to remove unpredictability and potential danger. By limiting interactions and controlling the environment, ADX Florence reduces the risk of violence, riots, or escape. It also allows staff to monitor inmates continuously, noting subtle changes in behavior that may indicate a problem. Yet, while it achieves security, it comes at a cost. Human beings are inherently social creatures, and complete isolation, especially over long periods, can produce severe psychological effects. Inmates may suffer from depression, anxiety, hallucinations, or even long-term cognitive impairment. Some have described the experience as being trapped in a concrete coffin, alive but cut off from the human connection that gives life meaning. For those housed in ADX Florence, isolation is total, relentless, and inescapable. It defines every aspect of existence, from waking to sleeping, eating to exercising, and thinking to feeling. The prison is designed not only to contain dangerous individuals but also to strip life down to its most basic elements: concrete, steel, silence, and the unyielding passage of time. In this environment, the concept of freedom becomes abstract, and the line between control and psychological torment grows thin, revealing the profound impact of living in extreme isolation. At ADX Florence, the passage of time is measured not by the rising and setting of the sun, but by the mechanical precision of a regimented schedule. Every minute of an inmate's day is planned, monitored, and controlled. There is no room for spontaneity, no space for unpredictability, and no opportunity to interact with another human being outside of carefully scripted moments. Life here is reduced to ritual and repetition, a series of actions repeated day after day in a concrete and steel environment designed to maintain absolute control over the inmates and minimize risk. The day begins at 6 a.m. sharp, when the prison intercom hums to life. Inmates awaken not to sunlight, birdsong, or the sounds of a world beyond the walls, but to the soft click of mechanical locks and the echo of guards' boots as they walk down the tier. The sound is constant and haunting, a reminder that even their waking moments are regulated by the rhythms of the prison rather than their own bodies. Breakfast is delivered through a small slot in the steel door, known as the food port, a brief moment of human interaction that lasts only seconds. A tray containing powdered eggs, oatmeal, or milk is passed through, and the officer's gloved hands disappear behind the steel hatch, leaving the inmate alone once again with nothing but concrete walls. After breakfast, the inmate's day continues in near total silence, broken only by the mechanical noises of the prison. There is no opportunity to see other inmates, and even brief eye contact is impossible. Each cell faces inward toward concrete walls, eliminating any sense of community or connection. In this environment, the mind becomes the primary companion, and inmates often develop their own rituals to cope with the isolation. Some pace the small cell, counting steps in circles. Others write letters they may never send, or read books that have been screened and approved for security. Time is marked by routine rather than natural cues, and the predictability becomes both a lifeline and a psychological burden. At 9 a.m., inmates are escorted to their daily exercise period, which lasts 1 hour. But exercise in ADX Florence is far from what most people imagine. The outdoor pen, often called the dog run, is a small, enclosed space the size of a large bathroom, surrounded by 20-foot concrete walls and a steel mesh roof. Inmates are shackled at the wrists, waist, and ankles, and escorted through multiple electronically controlled doors to reach the yard. They may walk in circles, stretch, or simply stare at the patch of sky above, but there is no interaction with other prisoners. On windy days, sand from the surrounding desert may drift into the yard, a rare sensory reminder of the outside world. Even in this brief hour of physical movement, the inmates remain under constant supervision, their every step observed through cameras and by guards. Once recreation ends, the inmate returns to the cell, and the heavy steel door closes with a metallic thud that has become the defining sound of life at ADX. The remainder of the morning is filled with routine activities. Reading approved books, writing letters, watching limited educational or religious programming on small black and white televisions, and waiting for the next meal. Letters and publications are screened by staff, and any attempt to conceal contraband can result in disciplinary action. Even communication with legal counsel is strictly controlled, conducted through reinforced glass and recorded for security purposes. Lunch follows the same isolated pattern as breakfast. A tray passed through the food slot, a brief exchange with the officer, and then silence. The food is simple, often rice, beans, or a meat substitute, and utensils are restricted to soft plastic to prevent self-harm. There is no cafeteria, no gathering space, no social interaction. Each inmate experiences this solitary act of nourishment alone, facing concrete walls that surround the cell in every direction. Afternoons are similarly structured. Inmates may study law, filing handwritten motions in hopes of reducing their sentences or appealing decisions. Others read religious texts or educational materials, keeping their minds engaged in ways that pass the time but also maintain a fragile connection to the outside world. Television programming, where available, is limited to black and white units that offer only controlled content. Every activity is monitored, logged, and assessed for behavioral patterns, allowing staff to identify any potential issues before they escalate. Dinner, arriving at 5 p.m., mirrors the earlier meals, delivered through the food slot with minimal contact. Once the tray is withdrawn, silence returns, almost absolute, with only the faint hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional shuffle of guards moving down the corridor. Even in the evening, the lights remain on, dimmed slightly to simulate night but never fully dark. Guards make hourly rounds, and any sign of self-harm or distress triggers immediate intervention. For inmates with mental health challenges, the afternoon and evening hours are often the most difficult, as the monotony of isolation weighs heavily, and the lack of stimulation exacerbates anxiety or depression. Night at ADX Florence does not bring the comfort of darkness or rest in the conventional sense. The lights remain dimly lit, and surveillance continues uninterrupted. Inmates may spend the hours reading, writing, or simply staring at the walls, while the facility operates with quiet precision around them. Cameras, motion sensors, and observation windows ensure that every movement is noted, every action recorded. Even in sleep, the inmates are observed, ensuring that the rigid structure of daily life never fully breaks. Throughout this meticulously planned schedule, the underlying theme is predictability and control. Each meal, movement, and activity is designed to reduce risk and prevent violence, but it also isolates the inmate from the world and from themselves. There is no spontaneity, no community, no shared human experience. Instead, life is defined by routine, observation, and survival, with time marked only by the mechanical rhythms of the prison. In ADX Florence, the daily routine is both a tool of safety and a mechanism of psychological pressure. It enforces order, minimizes risk, and ensures that even the most dangerous inmates can be contained. But in doing so, it also imposes a profound cost: the erosion of human spontaneity, connection, and autonomy. The day is measured not by sunrise and sunset, but by the metallic thud of doors, the hum of fluorescent lights, and the constant presence of surveillance, creating a reality where routine is both lifeline and confinement, structure and cage, control and silent torment. ADX Florence is not just a fortress of concrete, steel, and surveillance. It is also a home, albeit a grim and isolating one, for some of the most notorious criminals in modern history. This is the place where names that have terrorized the public, dominated headlines, and changed the course of legal history are contained, often for life. The inmates of ADX Florence are not average criminals. They are individuals whose actions have made them a threat not only to society but to other prisoners and even the staff in less secure facilities. Here, their notoriety meets the unyielding discipline of extreme isolation, a combination that has defined the prison's reputation as the ultimate containment center. Among the most infamous residents was Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. Kaczynski orchestrated a nationwide bombing campaign over nearly 2 decades, targeting universities, airlines, and individuals involved in modern technology. He avoided capture for years, eluding law enforcement through meticulous planning, a testament to the kind of mind ADX was built to contain. In ADX, Kaczynski spent his life sentence in near total isolation, with minimal human contact and a rigid schedule that stripped away the unpredictability he once mastered. Even with his intellect and strategic mind, The walls of ADX restricted him to an 8 by 10 foot cell, with only a narrow view of the sky and the company of his own thoughts. Similarly, Ramzi Youssef, the mastermind behind the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, also lived within these walls. Convicted of a crime that left hundreds injured and many dead, Youssef's presence in ADX was necessary to ensure the safety of other prisoners and staff. Yet, even someone capable of orchestrating attacks on such a large scale faces the same confinement as anyone else in HB Block. Solitary cells, constant surveillance, and 1 hour of exercise in a small, enclosed yard. The prison systems were not designed to intimidate him. They were designed to remove all opportunity for further harm, both to others and himself. The prison also housed Terry Nichols, a co-conspirator in the Oklahoma City bombing. His crime shook the nation and resulted in one of the deadliest acts of domestic terrorism in U.S. history. In ADX Florence, the prison ensures that individuals like Nichols are physically separated from the world they once impacted, but psychological challenges persist. Years of isolation and sensory deprivation confront even the most hardened criminals, proving that ADX's power lies not only in its walls but in its ability to impose discipline and control over the mind itself. Other infamous inmates include Joker Tsarnaev, convicted for his role in the Boston Marathon bombing, and Richard Reed, known as the Shoe Bomber. Both men committed acts of terror that captured global attention, and both were placed in ADX to ensure that they could neither plan nor execute any further violent acts. Even in this fortress, they are stripped of interaction, confined to their cells and monitored every moment of the day. Their lives at ADX reflect the prison's dual nature, a space that contains extreme violence while simultaneously inflicting a different kind of psychological pressure through isolation. The prison also held Larry Hoover, the founder of the Chicago-based Gangster Disciples, a man whose influence over organized crime was felt for decades. Hoover's placement in ADX was necessary to sever his ability to coordinate criminal activity from behind bars. Here he is removed not just from society, but from the network of people who once relied on him, leaving him in a structured environment where control is absolute and human contact is severely limited. Despite the extreme security, communication among inmates does sometimes occur, though it is heavily restricted and constantly monitored. Some prisoners attempt to tap messages through ventilation ducts, a modern form of prison Morse code, or use rhythmic flushing of toilets to communicate. These efforts are often discovered by guards and met with disciplinary action, reinforcing the strict separation that defines life inside ADX. Even the most clever or determined inmates find that isolation, observation, and the physical design of the prison limit human interaction to near zero. Living among such notorious figures magnifies the psychological strain for everyone, including the inmates themselves. While their crimes separate them from society, the extreme isolation of ADX removes the social reinforcement they might find elsewhere, leaving only their thoughts, regrets, or obsessions. Former inmates have described the experience as a constant test of the mind, where silence, monotony, and surveillance become both punishment and containment. Even the smallest stimuli, an insect crossing the floor, a gust of desert wind in the recreation pen, or the faint tapping of a neighbor through the vents, become lifelines or sources of stress, magnifying the effects of prolonged isolation. The presence of these infamous inmates also affects staff operations. Guards and psychologists must navigate a delicate balance, enforcing security, monitoring mental health, and managing a population with the potential for extreme violence. Every action, every routine, is calculated to prevent conflict and maintain control, reinforcing that ADX Florence is as much a system of human management as it is a physical structure. In essence, the inmates of ADX Florence are a living testament to the prison's mission, to contain those who have committed extreme acts of violence, to minimize risk to society, and to demonstrate the limits of human adaptability in isolation. The names etched in the history of ADX are not just criminals. They are symbols of the complex intersection between justice, security, and the human psyche, showing how society responds to those it deems irredeemably dangerous. Within the fortress of concrete and steel, their stories continue, shaped by routine, surveillance, and the invisible hand of isolation. While ADX Florence is often described as the most secure prison in the world, its true impact is not only measured in terms of containment and safety, it is measured in the mental and emotional strain it imposes on the inmates. For many, the walls of concrete and steel, the unrelenting surveillance, and the extreme isolation do not just confine the body, they profoundly affect the mind. Psychologists, human rights advocates, and former inmates alike have described ADX as a place where the architecture of control becomes a laboratory of sensory deprivation, producing effects that are both predictable and devastating. From the moment an inmate enters the facility, the environment begins to exert a psychological pressure unlike any other prison. The cells are small and entirely made of concrete, with minimal furnishings and only a tiny, angled window to the outside world. The lights never fully turn off. They are dimmed slightly at night but remain constant enough to disrupt natural sleep cycles. Meals are delivered through slots in the steel doors, exercise occurs in solitary pens, and communication with other humans is almost non-existent. The predictable routines, breakfast at 6 a.m., exercise at 9 a.m., dinner at 5 p.m., might offer structure, but for many they also erode a sense of agency and personal control, creating a profound mental strain that worsens over time. Sensory deprivation and social isolation are central to the psychological toll at ADX Florence. Humans are inherently social creatures. Our brains are wired to respond to interaction, stimuli, and environmental variation. When these elements are removed, as they are in ADX, the mind begins to manifest distress in visible and measurable ways. Inmates have reported hearing phantom sounds, voices whispering through the ventilation ducts, footsteps that aren't there, or even the imagined presence of other people. Some develop hallucinations or perceive threats where none exist, a response triggered by the extreme lack of external stimuli. In interviews and letters, inmates have described talking to ants on the floor, counting ceiling tiles obsessively, or creating imaginary companions, all attempts to preserve some semblance of connection. Long-term isolation also leads to profound emotional and cognitive changes. Psychologists such as Dr. Craig Haney, who has studied the effects of solitary confinement extensively, note that inmates often develop severe depression, anxiety, memory impairment, and social withdrawal. Even those who arrive at ADX mentally stable can experience rapid deterioration within months, while individuals with pre-existing mental health conditions often see their symptoms exacerbated. The very environment designed to contain dangerous behaviors can ironically create new vulnerabilities, pushing inmates towards self-harm or suicidal ideation. Indeed, ADX has a documented history of suicide attempts, both fatal and non-fatal, highlighting the human cost of extreme isolation. Mental health care in the facility, while present, faces limitations. Daily rounds by psychiatric staff are intended to monitor the inmates, providing therapy, medication, and intervention when necessary. Yet trust is fragile. Many inmates refuse treatment, fearing that showing vulnerability will extend their time in isolation or be used against them. Others simply withdraw, refusing to engage even with mental health professionals, and the very strategies intended to preserve well-being can clash with the prison's overarching objective: control and safety over rehabilitation. The Cunningham versus Federal Bureau of Prisons lawsuit of 2013 revealed systemic inadequacies in the treatment of inmates with severe psychiatric disorders, forcing the Bureau to improve services. Yet, critics argue that isolation itself is the fundamental problem, and no amount of therapy within the concrete confines of HB Block can fully mitigate its psychological effects. Even the simplest human experiences, sleep, relaxation, social interaction, are distorted in ADX. Fluorescent lights hum constantly, and guards conduct hourly rounds that interrupt any sense of privacy or rest. Noise is not defined by shouting or commotion but by the echo of silence itself, a subtle, pervasive pressure that weighs on the psyche. Meals are eaten alone, recreation is solitary, and books, television, and letters are the only permitted interactions with the outside world. In this environment, time loses its meaning. Days blend into nights, and weeks or months pass with few natural markers of progression. Inmates often experience disorientation, losing track of dates, seasons, and even the faces of their loved ones. Psychological tolls extend beyond depression or hallucinations. Many inmates experience emotional blunting, a state where they become detached from feelings, unable to respond to joy, anger, or grief in a normal range. Letters and testimonies reveal individuals who go years without crying, laughing, or showing anger, a symptom of the brain adapting to the constant monotony and isolation. Others describe obsessive routines, repetitive behaviors, or even compulsive rituals as coping mechanisms, ways to impose order on an environment that strips them of control. The impact of this psychological pressure is not limited to the inmates alone. Staff working in ADX also report the emotional weight of such an environment. Guards, psychologists, and other personnel are exposed to constant high-stress situations, extreme vigilance, and the repetitive, emotionless nature of their charges. Many experience burnout, nightmares, and emotional numbness, demonstrating that the psychological toll is embedded not just in the architecture, but in the human experience of living or working within it. In summary, the psychological toll at ADX Florence is immense and multifaceted. The prison is a masterclass in control, yet its effectiveness comes at the cost of mental and emotional well-being. Isolation, sensory deprivation, regimented routines, and constant surveillance converge to create an environment where human minds are tested to their limits. Inmates may survive physically, but the erosion of social connection, emotional stability, and cognitive function is profound, creating a reality where the mind becomes both the prisoner and the battlefield, and where the line between containment and psychological harm becomes indistinguishably thin. Within the stark and unyielding walls of ADX Florence, the step-down program represents the only structured pathway out of the extreme isolation of the control units. While the prison is designed to contain the most dangerous individuals with precision and rigor, the step-down program provides a faint glimmer of progression, a carefully monitored journey that allows inmates to gradually transition from total isolation toward environments with slightly less restrictive conditions. It is not intended as a reward or a form of rehabilitation in the traditional sense. Rather, it is a tool for behavioral management, designed to maintain security while mitigating some of the extreme psychological stress caused by prolonged solitary confinement. The program is structured in 4 distinct phases, each with increasing privileges and exposure to human contact, yet every step is meticulously controlled, monitored, and contingent upon compliance. Phase 1 begins with the control unit itself. Inmates in this phase continue to experience 23 hours per day in complete isolation, with only a single hour in the small recreation pen. Their every action, how they eat, sleep, respond to guards, and react to silence, is observed and recorded. Any sign of aggression, defiance, or manipulation can result in resetting their progress, effectively returning them to the beginning. This phase is meant to establish a baseline of discipline and compliance, ensuring that the inmate can handle extreme restriction without posing a threat to themselves or others. Phase 2, the intermediate control stage, introduces subtle yet significant changes. Inmates may now have access to a small radio, occasional phone calls, and a slightly expanded reading selection. For the first time, they might hear a human voice beyond the steel doors, though still through indirect means and under strict observation. Physical contact remains forbidden, and every communication is monitored. The goal of this stage is to begin reintegrating the inmate into controlled social interactions, testing their ability to maintain discipline and emotional stability in the presence of human connection. Phase 3, the pre-transfer unit, marks a more profound shift. Limited social interaction is introduced through group therapy sessions, controlled educational activities, and monitored religious programs. Inmates may now be shackled during group activities, but the opportunity to engage even minimally with others marks a stark contrast to the near-complete isolation of the initial phases. Guards and staff remain present at all times, observing behavioral cues, emotional responses, and interaction dynamics. The focus is not rehabilitation in the conventional sense, but reconditioning after years of sensory deprivation, training inmates to manage impulses and behave predictably under supervision. Finally, Phase 4 involves transfer to a lower security facility. This is the ultimate goal of the step-down program, though very few inmates ever reach it. Success requires sustained positive behavior, compliance with every rule, and demonstrated psychological stability over months or even years. Transfer may be to institutions like USP Marion or USP Terre Haute, where conditions are less restrictive but still highly secure. For many long-term inmates, including those serving multiple life sentences such as Ramsey Youssef or Terry Nichols, reaching this stage offers only marginal change, a move from one concrete cell to another with slightly more privileges. Yet even this incremental progression represents a critical tool for managing dangerous individuals safely. The step-down program also serves a broader purpose. It mitigates psychological decay caused by long-term isolation. ADX Florence is notorious for its severe sensory deprivation, and prolonged solitary confinement can lead to hallucinations, depression, memory loss, and emotional detachment. By gradually reintroducing social contact and minor privileges, the program attempts to preserve mental stability while still maintaining the security measures essential to housing the nation's most dangerous criminals. Psychologists monitor behavioral patterns closely, noting any relapse or signs of mental distress, and adjust the program accordingly. Despite its structured approach, the step-down program is controversial. Human rights advocates argue that the very notion of progress is illusory, given the extreme conditions from which inmates emerge. Even at Phase 4, freedom is limited, contact with other humans remains minimal, and true rehabilitation is rarely achievable. Critics describe the program as a bureaucratic illusion, a way to manage extreme behaviors while maintaining the psychological pressure that defines ADX. For inmates serving life without parole, the step-down program may offer no real hope of escape from isolation. It simply provides a slightly less confining environment within the same rigid system. Staff involvement is critical at every stage. Correctional officers, psychologists, and mental health professionals observe inmates constantly, track minute behavioral details, and intervene when necessary. Each phase is meticulously documented. Compliance, response to stressors, emotional regulation, and overall demeanor are logged daily. Any deviation from expected behavior can result in demotion to an earlier phase, reinforcing the principle that progression is conditional and contingent on total control. This oversight ensures the safety of both staff and inmates but also underscores the program's central paradox. Freedom is granted only through compliance and predictability, not through personal choice or genuine rehabilitation. In essence, the step-down program embodies the dual purpose of ADX Florence: to contain the most dangerous individuals securely while attempting, within narrow parameters, to maintain some measure of mental stability. It is a testament to the prison's highly controlled system, illustrating how even minimal human contact and privileges are leveraged as tools of management rather than rewards. For inmates, it is both a path and a prison. A structured journey through incremental freedom that still operates under the same principles of isolation, observation, and control that define life at ADX. ADX Florence is often referred to as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, and for good reason. Its reputation as the most secure prison in the United States, and arguably the world, is not merely due to high walls, razor wire, or armed guards. The facility is a masterpiece of architectural and technological design, engineered to anticipate, prevent, and neutralize threats at every level. From the placement of corridors to the integration of surveillance systems, every aspect of the prison functions as part of a cohesive, multi-layered strategy of containment, making escape virtually impossible and maintaining absolute control over inmates deemed too dangerous for any other facility. At the heart of ADX's security philosophy is the concept of control through architecture. This principle ensures that the physical design of the prison itself enhances security, reducing reliance solely on guards or technology. Corridors are strategically angled so that a single officer can observe multiple lines of sight simultaneously, and all movement within the facility is channeled through narrow passageways that can be secured in seconds. Each control unit is isolated from others, minimizing any possibility of interaction between inmates. The cells themselves are small 8 by 10 foot concrete boxes, with steel doors and reinforced walls designed to prevent both escape and physical harm. Even the beds, desks, and stools are made of concrete, eliminating potential weapons. Security extends beyond the immediate confines of the cell. ADX employs a network of electronic and mechanical systems to ensure constant vigilance. Each cell door operates electronically, controlled remotely from a centralized command center. Doors are equipped with backup manual overrides, allowing guards to seal or open them even during emergencies such as fires or power outages. The entire perimeter is monitored by motion detectors, seismic sensors, and infrared cameras, creating overlapping fields of detection that leave virtually no blind spots. Even the air ventilation system is isolated, preventing inmates from passing notes or contraband through the ducts, a method that has been historically used in other high-security facilities. Beyond structural measures, the prison integrates behavioral tracking and digital surveillance technology. Every inmate has a detailed digital profile containing disciplinary history, psychological evaluations, and daily behavioral logs. Guards and administrators can monitor patterns of agitation, stress, or potential threats in real time, allowing preemptive intervention before a problem escalates. This integration of information with physical security measures means that ADX is not just a prison for containment, but a system for prediction and prevention. Each inmate's behavior is continuously assessed, and even minor deviations are noted and addressed, ensuring that the risk of violence or escape remains minimal. The perimeter defenses of ADX are equally sophisticated. The prison sits on 37 acres in the high desert of Colorado, surrounded by triple-layered razor wire fences, pressure-sensitive ground sensors, and observation towers staffed by armed guards. Beyond the fences lies a no-man's land of gravel and sand, where footprints are immediately visible, making undetected movement impossible. Infrared beams monitor the area day and night, triggering alerts if anything breaches the perimeter. Even wildlife can set off alarms, reflecting the extreme sensitivity and redundancy of the system. Two armed guards patrol continuously, using night vision equipment and radios linked directly to the control center, ensuring that no threat goes unnoticed. Inside, the prison's technological integration extends to all aspects of inmate life. Cameras are mounted in every corner of corridors, exercise yards, and cells, providing continuous visual surveillance. Motion sensors track even the smallest movements within cells, and alarms can be triggered automatically in case of tampering, self-harm, or unauthorized activity. Lights are controlled centrally and can be adjusted remotely to signal different phases of the day, emergencies, or behavioral interventions. Even medical visits occur under strict observation, often through reinforced glass, limiting physical contact while maintaining necessary care. The combination of architecture, technology, and procedural rigor is what truly sets ADX apart. Unlike conventional prisons that rely on physical barriers and occasional guard oversight, ADX functions as a fully integrated containment system. Its design anticipates human ingenuity and attempts to bypass security, leaving virtually no opportunity for escape. In the facility's history, no inmate has ever escaped successfully, a testament to the meticulous planning and layered security protocols embedded into every element of the prison. Even the staff operates under the constraints of the system. Guards and psychologists are trained to work within this highly controlled environment, following procedures that ensure both safety and compliance with the law. Every movement, from escorting inmates to handling mail, is choreographed to maintain security. The prison is not just a building. It is a living system where architecture, technology, and human behavior converge to maintain order and minimize risk. In essence, ADX Florence represents the apex of containment design. The concrete walls, steel doors, and razor wire fences are just the visible elements. The true strength lies in the integration of human monitoring, behavioral data, and technological redundancy, all orchestrated to ensure that even the most dangerous inmates remain under control. It is a place where escape is not only physically impossible but systematically unimaginable, where every action, every movement, and every choice is anticipated and managed. In this environment, the world's most dangerous criminals are not only contained, they are constantly observed, their behaviors mapped, and their interactions restricted. ADX Florence is more than a prison. It is a four-dimensional system of security, where architecture, technology, and human oversight merge to create a fortress of control unlike any other on the planet. As we conclude our exploration of ADX Florence, it becomes clear that the prison is far more than a physical structure of concrete, steel, and razor wire. It is, in essence, a manifestation of society's approach to extreme danger, punishment, and control. From the outside, it is hailed as the ultimate solution to housing the nation's most violent and high-risk criminals. A place where security is absolute and the public is protected. But when we peer behind the fortified walls, the picture becomes more complex, raising profound ethical, psychological, and societal questions about the nature of justice and human dignity. ADX Florence embodies a paradox. It protects society from individuals who have caused immense harm, yet it does so through measures that many argue inflict harm in a different, subtler form. Inmates are confined to 8 by 10-foot cells, subjected to constant surveillance, and allowed minimal interaction with other humans. The step-down program, while offering incremental progress, is not designed as rehabilitation. It is a mechanism to ensure behavioral compliance while maintaining security. The relentless isolation and sensory deprivation that define life at ADX may safeguard society, but they also challenge the boundaries of humane treatment. Herein lies a moral dilemma. Is society justified in imposing extreme psychological pressure on individuals, even those who have committed egregious acts, to ensure safety? The ethical debate surrounding ADX Florence is further complicated by its effects on mental health. Psychologists, human rights organizations, and former inmates have all highlighted the long-term consequences of solitary confinement: hallucinations, depression, memory loss, and social withdrawal. Dr. Craig Haney, a renowned psychologist who has studied solitary confinement extensively, has called the prison a laboratory of sensory deprivation, where the mind deteriorates as a predictable response to isolation. Former inmates describe talking to ants, counting tiles, or hearing phantom voices as coping mechanisms, highlighting the human cost of extreme control. The very design that prevents physical harm simultaneously induces psychological stress, prompting questions about whether ADX crosses a line into systemic psychological punishment. From a societal perspective, ADX Florence also forces us to examine the balance between security and human rights. The prison is designed for containment, not rehabilitation. It houses some of the most dangerous criminals, terrorists, murderers, and gang leaders, but the methods used raise concerns about proportionality and ethics. Is it morally acceptable to expose individuals to extreme isolation for decades, even when their crimes are heinous? How do we reconcile the goal of protecting society with the principle of preserving mental and emotional well-being? These are questions that legal scholars, ethicists, and human rights advocates grapple with, highlighting the tension between justice, safety, and humanity. Staff at ADX Florence also live within this ethical and psychological landscape. Guards, psychologists, and support personnel must navigate the daily realities of managing extreme isolation, monitoring dangerous individuals, and enforcing strict routines. Many experience burnout, emotional detachment, and anxiety, demonstrating that the psychological toll extends beyond inmates. Their experiences raise further questions about the human cost of extreme containment systems, not just for those incarcerated, but for those entrusted with maintaining security. Moreover, ADX Florence serves as a reflection of society's broader approach to punishment and risk management. The prison's meticulous design, technological integration, and procedural oversight highlight an obsession with predictability and control. Every movement is monitored, every interaction recorded, and every deviation addressed. While this ensures safety, it also reduces the human experience to a series of behaviors to be observed and managed, stripping both inmates and staff of spontaneity and normal social interaction. It is a stark reminder of how systems of control, when taken to extremes, can reshape human lives in ways that go beyond conventional notions of imprisonment. Yet, despite the psychological and ethical complexities, the facility is undeniably effective at its stated goal: security and containment. No inmate has ever escaped, no coordinated violence has disrupted the facility, and the public remains shielded from the worst of those housed inside. ADX Florence represents an extreme solution to an extreme problem, a place where society has decided that some individuals must be contained at almost any human cost. The question that remains, however, is whether this solution is ethically sustainable, or whether the very tools that ensure safety create a new form of harm, challenging our understanding of justice and human dignity. In reflecting on ADX Florence, it is impossible to ignore the human stories behind the statistics. Each inmate has a name, a history, and a mind that responds to extreme conditions in profound ways. Each guard experiences the pressures of a system designed for zero tolerance for error. And each decision made within the facility, the strict enforcement of routines, the measured use of surveillance, the structured step-down program, carries ethical weight. The prison is both a monument to security and a mirror of moral complexity, forcing society to confront uncomfortable truths about punishment, safety, and the human psyche. Ultimately, ADX Florence is more than a prison. It is a case study in the limits of control, the consequences of isolation, and the intersection of justice and humanity. It challenges us to consider whether absolute security justifies extreme psychological constraints and whether a system designed to contain the most dangerous individuals can do so without eroding the very principles of humanity it aims to protect. As we close this exploration, these questions linger, leaving us to ponder the delicate balance between safety, justice, and the enduring capacity for human suffering, even behind walls that seem impenetrable.